Okay, I stand because I like to see you. He said something about me, but now you also can see me, and maybe it's not the same. So, psychotherapy is a very big field. There are at least 500 different styles of therapy, psychotherapy now. And meditation is a word that covers many, many different approaches. However, in both psychotherapy and meditation, you have some styles which are more concerned with analysis, with trying to gain some understanding of structures, to bring a clarity to how knots are tied in our lives. So in both approaches, you have a spectrum with more analytic knowledge-seeking approach on one side, and others that are directed towards immediate experience. For example, in psychotherapy, you have drama therapy, chant therapy, where the work begins with encountering inhibitions. That the inhibition is in fact the work. How we limit ourselves is what we have to get close to. It's one thing to talk about your situation as if you were some kind of object out there, and it's another to be in a more naked, direct contact where there's nowhere to hide. In some ways, the approach depends on what you think is at stake. As we know, we're living in a Western country. There are certain assumptions and beliefs that we have about how life is, what its focus is. And generally we think we're born out of our mother's body, we inherit some biological direction through DNA and so on. And then we have interaction in the family, in school, and general societal expectations which mold our sense of what is possible and what is impossible. This includes the directions of gender, race, class, and so on, which could be very powerful in certain areas of the culture and not so important in others. And then you grow up and you do your best, and you live a while and then you die. And psychotherapy can try to take out some of the bad bits and make you more free to enjoy some of the good bits. That is to say, almost all the schools of psychotherapy are fundamentally secular. They don't have any notion of liberation. They're about finding ways to help people to work with their potential, to recognize how they sabotage themselves, to see how they've internalized messages from the environment, and that these introjects from the environment can be incorporated into our sense of self, so that we are constituted out of our environment. I mean, that seems fairly obvious. Yet we also think, but I'm me. Yeah, if I'm me, I'm me. And this is a little bit dangerous, because I'm me claims an identification with what I find coming inside me. So if your parents didn't have much belief in you, and that belief has been incorporated as part of how you make sense of yourself, then long after you have left that formative environment, you will continue to limit yourself. So a central question is always, well, what is the self? We know that when we meet different people, different aspects of ourselves are evoked. If we're playing with a 2-year-old child, our postures, gestures, tone of voice are particular. If you're talking with your boss at work, it's a whole different constellation of yourself. So performatively, our potential is released situationally. That is to say, I find myself silly. It's not that we know exactly what to do. If you meet a friend and they have a baby that's 1 month old, without intention or effort, your gaze will soften. You lean towards the baby. You make strange sounds. We find ourselves doing this. And when we become more mindful, we see that a lot of the time, our performance is co-emergent with the environment. However, our reading of the situation is often self-referential. So I develop an internal story to myself, which is egosyntonic or harmonious with my sense of self. So it's as if I know who I am and what I like and what I don't like. So This is a very light way of addressing the question of what is there an unconscious? Are there habits and urges, impulses, which arise through us and are taken by other people to be us, and yet we are not the conscious instigator or developer of these tendencies? So in that way we start to see, a lot is going on, which if I attend to it will put into question the singularity of my sense of self. So in many modern approaches to psychotherapy, there's a sense of a dialogic self, a self which is manifesting through internal dialogue between self-subsystems, and the patterning, balance of the availability of these self-positionings is evoked by factors in the environment. That is to say, a healthy, functioning person is unstable. So this is the general arena for psychotherapy. How to improve our possibilities of having a good life. Some systems of therapy, particularly analysis, are not particularly concerned with developing as an ethical person. They're more concerned to see, this is how you operate. These are the implications, and it's left open. So there's a kind of existential ungroundedness in that. Who can say how we should live? People live in all sorts of ways. Many cultures are still slowly dragging themselves out of patriarchy. So there's a suspicion of those who seem to know something because of the power claims of knowledge. I know what you should do. Really? On what basis? If you're a woman, then you should do this. So usually the direction of other people's existence is manifesting from a very narrow reading of a person's potential. Knowledge is blind, which is not what they tell you in school. We're going to open your eyes by telling you what's important. And on the basis of what you know, you can predict. You know about, so you can know ahead. Before the phenomena emerge, you're already planning what you're going to do. This is a basically monologic structure. This is my voice, which is going to identify the pattern and find the way to proceed. So when we start to ease ourselves out of these predictive structures, we return to the question of ethics. How shall I live? What's my obligation to other people? And as we see with climate change and the consequences of mass consumerism in many wealthy countries, the consequences of our actions start to become more and more visible. What shall we do? So I have to keep a sense of the bigger picture. Generally speaking, psychotherapy is not very concerned with this. Some of the approaches that developed from systems theory, particularly models of family therapy and group therapy, are concerned with collaboration in forms of relating which are inclusive of the potential of each person. But that's difficult to sustain in the face of the upwelling of our more narrow ego-focused intentions. So I'm going to say a little bit more about meditation now, and related to Buddhist tradition. The view of how we are and where we are is very, very different. This generates a particular ethos and an approach to how to live. Buddha's first teaching was pointing to 4 truths. So there is suffering, in fact that suffering can end, and it can end because it has a cause, and there is a way of finding a route to the ending of suffering. Particularly, suffering was set out as birth, old age, sickness and death. So, we have been born. If we're lucky, we'll get old, and then we'll die. Often there's some sadness in that, but that's not the end. Because as we move through the world, our activity is propulsive. That is to say, we are dynamic creatures, and there is an excess in what we do. So we formulate an intention, bring it into being, the particular action is concluded. But just like rubbing your hands together, there's a kind of charge, kind of electric charge which is built up. A discharge manifests as karma. Karma simply means activity. That is to say that activity, because it is dynamic, has consequence arising after the ending of its immediately visible result. One of the things that the Buddha encouraged was to reflect on the nature of impermanence. I've only been in Lisbon a short time, but it seems to me this is a very nostalgic city. It's haunted by the past. In a sense, you're lucky, you're just called Portugal, and so you can fade gently. I'm from Great Britain, so our collapse is much more public and embarrassing. What was is no longer the case. The world changes, economics change. You have to find ways to survive in a very competitive world. Countries have to reinvent themselves. Individuals have to reinvent themselves. Coal industry is under attack in many countries. Heavy engineering, many traditional jobs are vanishing. And so the patterns of human skills and capacity that were useful working in a shipyard are not so applicable for IT. Everything in the outer world changes. Seasons change, leaves come off the trees, social structures change. Children behave in ways that their parents are horrified. Why do you want a tattoo? I don't have a tattoo. Why do you want a tattoo? Tattoos are for criminals and sailors. The culture changes. Our bodies change. Our thoughts change. Sensations, feelings, patterns of memories. When we look, we see that all the constituents of what I take to be myself are truly unstable. They are not there as a continuing formation, but are more like the strings in a piano. Strings are there, ready to be played, but somebody's fingers has to depress the keys, and then that sound will arise. So, depending on the pathways of society, some chords will arise frequently, and some remain silent throughout our life. We are dynamic in a dynamic world. So, who am I? Transient patterns. Is that all? Well, we see these transient patterns. We have two approaches to this. One is to identify these patterns through reflecting on what's happened today or in the last week and so on. We sift through the moments of experience and create a topology of interpretation. Some things are peaked, they seem very important, and others are in the valley and in the dark. So, as I form myself, I edit myself. I can edit it internally in terms of some critical aspects of my own psyche, or in terms of what I think will be acceptable to others. So, or the other aspect is, as I am walking and talking, I see the street in front of me. People are walking towards me. I'm passing shop windows. I feel the movement in my knees and my hips and my feet. The body is moving according to people coming towards me. There's an aspect of myself which is organizing my participation in this moving world, almost as if I'm on a stage moving with other dancers on the stage. And yet there is a more basic awareness of that. In a sense, I am also the stage, because everything is being revealed. The cars, the street lights, glistening on the water, and so on. And everything is coming at once. When we finish here, we'll go down the stairs, out of the door, and there, it's a big world. It comes to us all at once. We're not consciously building up a picture. Once we encounter it, we have our selectivity operate. That is to say, within the field of experience revealed by awareness, the particularizing, ego-referential, constructive organization selects some things as important and others as not. So, the potential of myself and the potential of the world constantly pulsing. We have meditation to promote well-being, to help us be a bit more calm, clear, perhaps a bit more mindful. That is to say, I want to be more present, but present as me. My presence. I'm here. I'm in touch with what's... So this is a kind of ego-syntonic or ego-harmonious presence. And that helps me to see factors in the environment which could be provocative to who I think I am. So as me, there's lots of things I don't like. The problem is, life has already arrived. It happens because it happens immediately, and then I think, why are you saying that? Why do you look at me like that? But you're already looking at me like that. I can't stop you, but I can react. So the ego is always coming after the fact. The ego is out of time, like a really bad band. The drummer doesn't get it. So we're catching up with what's going on. This is, again, a kind of friction. This is quite exhausting. And part of that is because when you say cathected with or identified with your particular habitual ego patterning, this is a predictive patterning, and so you have a selective attention. You're looking for things that will confirm your notion of how it is. We're good at self-deception. So we can hide from ourselves the gap between how we think the world is and how it actually is in order to continue in our fantasies. You can see many political leaders are pushing this. The health of the nation is increased by cutting down all the trees. This is ludicrous. Something really to laugh at. But it's not laughable because it's very serious. Stupid people with power do a lot of harm, but you can't tell them they're stupid. Eventually will lock you up and you get in a lot of trouble. So you can see how the ego and the power system of the world go together, which is why traditionally people who do a lot of meditation go into caves in the mountains, because politics, inequality, funny stories, fake news, it's always there. So, two basic kinds of meditation. First is calming the mind, shamatha. And this is usually done by taking a stable object and focusing your attention. It could be the sensation of the breath at the nostrils, or an unexciting pebble, something you can just rest your attention on. And then when you find your attention drifting off, then bring it back to the focus you've decided to have. Gradually, you learn to have a more consistent focus for your attention. Then, in the second form, you can use that focused attention to start to analyze how you are. So you can start to, for example, in the most simple form, you take the focused attention that maybe you had at your nostrils, you take it to the top of your head, and then you scan down through your body, simply being attentive to what's there. As you go down, certain sensations occur. It could be hot, it could be grinding, it could be sharp. The idea is simply to be attentive to that, not to interpret it, not to elaborate, but to keep going down until you come to the soles of your feet. Then you go back up. When you come to the place where this hot sensation was, something else is occurring. Then you go down again, something else is occurring. This is how phenomena are. They are momentary, precise, and specific. Now, if when you feel this hot feeling, you go, what's that? You phrase your question like that. This implies there is a what? You want to get a handle on it. Oh, some pain is there. It's not very much. But you're not very brave. What is that? Some concern. So now when you're coming up from your feet, you want to check it out. How is the pain getting on? So as you give attention to the formation as something, you're investing it with attention, which thickens it and gives it an importance. You are making the pain. And then now, what shall I do? I can think about it, I can tell someone about it, I might decide to go to the doctor. Many people turn up at the doctor with these aches and pains. What does it mean? Doctors, doesn't mean anything. You have a human body, it's full of nerves that go like this and go like that. It's meaningless, but it occurred. I am full of meaningless occurrence, but I want my life to be meaningful. So I apply all that I know to wrap this event, to give it a shape. I have a name for it. And every time I pay attention to it, I inject it with more density and more intensity. This is the process of reification. I'm making a thing, an event, which was transient and impactful, undeniable, and yet in and of itself ungraspable. Now I have determined what it is, I can grasp it. But what am I grasping? The sensation is long gone. I'm grasping my idea. So I go to the doctor and say, I don't know what happened yesterday, but I had this really strange sensation. What do you feel now? Well, it seems to have gone, but it was really important. So in that way we can see how transient phenomena become kind of building blocks for creating structures of meaning and identity. Someone comes to therapy and they say, oh, I was really bullied at school. Oh, how long ago was that? 20 years ago. Any bullying recently? No. Oh. So why is it important? That wouldn't sound very polite. I'm paying you money, you should listen, make your ears bigger, Mr. Therapist. I was bullied. Oh, me. Something happened. So interesting. You have a little rock there, a little bridge, way bridge. We have something and we have happened. Something is big. Happened is gone. Then you see how we listen. The past is gone, but we keep it close to us. And a lot of PTSD symptoms are iatrogenic. Iatrogenic means they're generated by the attention of the doctor, physician, therapist. We feed into the seeming importance of phenomena. So from the Buddhist point of view, to be fascinated by the story and the accounts is a way that will increase suffering and not decrease it. So in that way they go in opposite direction from therapy. From the meditative point of view, the focus is to see, how do I get involved? You just sit in a relaxed way. There's a lot going on. Sounds outside, maybe a dog barking, a car. If you're meditating with other people, maybe people move around in the room a bit. Different thoughts and feelings arising and passing. Our ego orientation feels there is something there, something important. So the meditation instruction is to be aware of that desire for grasping and involvement. Generally our relating to outer objects and inner objects is two main movements. One is desire, attachment, fusion, merging, and the other is aversion, pushing away. We want to get rid of this. Both of these positionings arise from the sense that something has happened. They are a reaction to somethingness. So this is where a Buddhist reading would be very different from most therapy readings. Somethingness, from the Buddhist point of view, is not intrinsic. It's a compound, a construct, that by the investment of our attention, as in the view of Gestalt therapy, we bring something to the foreground, we make it figural, and the rest recedes into the background. When things are in the background, they don't vanish, but they're in this kind of liminal state in which they could come into some existence, or they can remain as a potential. But once they come forward, it's as if something's happening. And then we react, liking, not liking, get involved, push away. So the main instruction in meditation is just relax, stay open to whatever's coming. Now that has certain similarities to Freud's idea, free association, not to inhibit the patternings of the arising of the mind. For Freud, that's the work of the patient. The work of the analyst is to develop a free-floating attention. As Wilfred Bion said, the analyst should be without memory or desire, just present. Because as soon as you commit yourself into identifying patterns, you start to go into the co-creation of meaning. But here the meditator is doing or allowing both of these simultaneously. The uninterrupted free flow of experience, however it is, and a free open attention without bias, without judgment. Of course, we have a lot of habit formations lurking in the background. psychic anxiety, psychic policeman
that psicológico, policiamento psicológico.
Maintain the patterning of ourselves that would be socially acceptable or acceptable to our
padrões
internalized symbols.
aceitáveis.
So we have to allow these to arise in the practice, but not merge into the voice of your mother.
Vossa mãe.
Oh, I don't want to be like this. Who is like this? If you pick it up, it's yours. If you don't pick it up, it's just there. So there we see our mind can be like a private garden in which you want to have flowers and no weeds. Then you're very busy. Weeds are very happy to come. Nighttime, floating on the breeze, little seeds. Keeping a tidy garden is a lot of work. Even the roses, you have to prune them because they get very big. So this is self-maintenance. You've got to be on the job all the time. But, whose mind is this? These things are arising. It becomes my mind when I adopt it. But if I relax, then this is a public park. All kind of things happen in a public park. In some bushes, people are injecting heroin, other people are fucking on behind a tree. All sorts of things in a public park. Sex and death is not so surprising. It just happens. And the paradox is, the less involved you are, the more clarity you have. The harder you try, the more stupid you become. You might be intelligent and get a PhD, but you're still stupid because you're not there in the moment of the arising. You build up an edifice of knowledge and information which you can bring for analysis and organization after the fact. So here, through meditation, you have the possibility of directly perceiving the birth of the ego. The ego is not an enduring entity. It's not a thing that we have. It's an organizational function. It's how we make sense of what's around us and what's inside us when we have our starting point. This is me. So I'm standing here looking at you. You are my world for the moment. You are my world. You're not some added extra. You're not a side salad of chips. You're not some side dish. It feels like that. I'm just me. After a while, I get out, I go out of here, maybe I don't see you again. Our lives just cross for a moment. But in this moment, you are all I have. You are me. Because this is what's happening for me. So that's the direct experience. Or I can cut the umbilical cord and send all you babies to be out there on your own. I'm going to live in my skin bag. You live in your skin bag. You have your life. I have my life. But at the moment, you are my life. It's not that you're in my life, as if my life was a bucket. Pop you in for a while and take you out. But directly, this is what there is. We have the past, which is gone. We have the future, which hasn't come. And we're here. And there's this. This is this. Vital, alive, connected. We are co-emergent in this moment. We are the field of experience manifesting and in the diversity of each of us in this situation. And when we look at the actuality of phenomena rather than our ideas about them, we can't find an essence to them. The essence is imputed. We get to know someone, we find their name, they do, whether they're with someone, because they've got kids or whatever. You build up your image of them, and you think that your image of them is somehow connected with them. But they are alive, and moment by moment, this is them. Each of us is the thisness of our existence. The narrative is an explanation after the fact of this. Well, you wouldn't get a job if you said that in an interview. You say, I can perform these tasks. I'm a reliable person. I'm trained. I'm qualified. I know what I'm doing. This will get you euros. If you say this, I'm very good at this. Say, and how are we going to make money from this? We want that. That is where the money is. Bring us the things. Solidify yourself if you want the job. And we do. This is the ego. The key thing is not to make it an either or. When you see that the ego is a pattern formation, then you can manifest that pattern, as I did in public health service clinic, teaching in universities, both environments full of politics and unpleasant. Move with the tides of liking and disliking, and it's not so serious because I'm not producing my life. My life is not an outcome of my activity. My life is this fresh, naked, open moment, revealing and revealing and revealing all these patterns of interaction. And so you can be in quite trapped situations. For example, you might have old parents you have to look after. It takes quite a lot of time. It's often very sad. They start to just dementia. How could you be free? Because you're always free. This is just a particular patterning arising in the bright field of immediacy. So the function of meditation is to help us shift the starting point. If you start with the idea of the self, with the person you take yourself to be, you're starting with assumptions, and that creates a reasonably efficient capacity to operate in the world as we take it to be. But because of its gravity and solidity, you get friction, you get worn out, you get tired. You try your best. Life's hard. You're in it. It doesn't seem to get any clearer. Things happen. You're trapped. Who's trapping you? Not your sick relative, but your own conceptual interpretation of your identity. So the function of meditation is to open oneself to awareness which is always present but rarely attended to. For example, when you get up in the morning and you go to the bathroom, you look in the mirror and you see yourself. Maybe happy, maybe sad. Anyway, that's me. What is unlikely that you say is, thank you mirror for showing me the reflection. Without the mirror, we would not have a reflection. But the mirror is taken for granted. The mirror is like awareness. It's the basis of showing, but our attention is towards the image, the reflection. And so we're busy this and this and this and this, and we don't find the openness within which all these movements are occurring. That open awareness is itself something which is present all the time. Consciousness, in terms of consciousness through the senses and mental processing consciousness. So for example, you're sitting, reading, and you have very little sense of smell. You want to make a coffee, you go in the kitchen, suddenly there's this aroma. This capacity to smell arises with the object. It's not a permanent feature. But awareness is there always potential, like the mirror. So the more we relate to that, we have a sense of how it is when we die. And there's a lot of details about how to work with the process of death. So we don't have so much time to know. Maybe you get some sense of the importance of the frame of reference. Meditation offers the possibility of being liberated from the limitation of ego identity as the totality of who you are. Of course, if you do a classical psychoanalysis, that is loosening up the the texture of superego, ego, and unconscious. So there is more capacity to be with the dynamic movement of the psyche. But it tends to be a capacity which is present in the consulting room, which is a particularly privileged situation and difficult to take into the world. When we do meditation, there is the same risk. Many people do long retreats, intensive retreats, and then when they come out, they feel weird. They can't quite get back in the rhythm of life. And this is a culture where you need to get money and a job, no one's going to take care of you. So the kind of meditation that I'm interested in opening up for people is one which is done for shortish periods of time, but with a lot of attention of how that feeling tone or mood or presence is opened up into getting up from the meditation cushion and being in life. If meditation is simply a holiday from life, it has some benefits of reducing anxiety and
Yeah,
increasing
features,
well-being,
yes.
but that's all. Whereas if you can bring an open presence into any situation, then you can be connected with how things are. And then the mood of what is around you becomes your ally. And you take your place in the world as a participant. You start on the inside. Your problem in modern life is alienation, loneliness, desolation. Cities are pretty unfriendly. People's lives are sad. Family structures are not so strong. Where do I belong? When you relax and open, you're already here. Awareness is inclusive and the ego is exclusive. So if you can get more presence of awareness in your life, everything becomes easier. Okay, so that's probably enough for this evening. Pleasure to be with you. Yeah, if you have any questions or thoughts.
May I, James? Thank you for your sharing presentation. I don't work as a psychotherapist, but I'm studying. And when I was listening to you, I was wondering, so if I became an practitioner or an expert in meditation, what role is there for psychotherapy? So do you think that someone that practices meditation regularly and can take it to their lives and be more aware, do you think there is still a need in some cases for psychotherapy? So what role for psychotherapy when people do practice meditation?
Okay, so there are, generally speaking, in Buddhism, two aspects, wisdom and compassion.
Sorry.
So, early retirement. So I was saying, generally in Buddhism, there are two aspects, wisdom and compassion. So, through doing the meditation, we have the wisdom of seeing that our self-construct is not a safe castle to inhabit, but is rather a limitation on our potential. When we see this for ourselves, we might feel some compassion for other people who are also unnecessarily limiting their lives because they are over-identified with family stories, national stories. So, meditation means, in the way I'm describing it briefly tonight, meditation means an open welcome to whatever occurs. The mind as a part, it's not mine. I'm not in charge. So we say to whatever comes, come as you are. It's fine. If you can then take that mood into the therapy, there's the possibility that people find a way to free associate. The internalized parental prohibitions from all kind of pathways put fear into the ego. If I am not acceptable to others, I'm going to collapse inside. I need the approval of other people in order to be myself. And that's true, because inclusivity means we're in it together, and I can only be me with you. I'm talking here because you're here. Imagine if the room was empty and I was talking. It's now 2 o'clock in the morning. Poor lonely James, what is he doing? No? I'm talking with you. Hopefully I'm not talking at you or even to you, but with you. That we can find an ambience where we are connected. And that's the basis of psychotherapy. All neurosis comes from the absence of love. And love is welcome. Love is welcome, as you are. So there are many therapeutic techniques that people develop now. And some people do a long assessment, first of all, which can be quite objectifying. But the key thing is that there is a sense of, I can be me here. And especially because I don't know who I am. So I'm going to be here in my artificiality, in my persona, in my mask. And gradually the mask starts to thin and there is more naked I am-ness. But that is, I think, primarily facilitated by the quality of gaze of the therapist, the tone of their voice, and the welcome that they embody. One more question, let me end.
She's a Buddhist and she practices meditation. And I would like to know, as a psychotherapist, if you use hypnosis in your work.
Hypnosis?
Yes.
I would go with Milton Erickson, that all life is nothing but hypnosis. And in Buddhism, when they talk of ignorance, this is the meta hypnosis. And then inside that you have all the particular. So the 6 realms of samsara, these are hypnagogic forms.
The reason why I make these questions is because I'm a hypnotherapist. Nowadays I understand better altered states of consciousness that meditation brings. And that without hypnosis, I could not understand this altered state of consciousness as well as I do. So I'm asking you if it would be also important to the concept of impermanence, to use this tool, hypnosis, as psychotherapist.
To link impermanence and hypnotherapy.
Yeah. What do you think about it?
In a sense, hypnotherapy allows us to have a rest from the phallic structure of the ego. Then in hypnotherapy there is a kind of relaxing into allowing life to flow through more. And so it's a subtle way of deconstructing the delusion of mastery. That we are not in charge of our lives. We are participants in an ever-shifting field. And the most important thing is to be relaxed and able to balance and rebalance. Because the events of life are moving like a strong wind, and so we have to find a way to sense that. The ego's defensive structure is usually to go to rigidity, to resistance, which is the earth element, making barriers and consolidating our sense of who we are. And when you can soften that, you have water, fire and wind, the moving elements, which links with impermanence, and then think, oh, I'm not destroyed by moving as it moves, because the ground of my being is space. Awareness is ungraspable. But the ego wants to form itself as something. So as soon as you go to earth and you have terrain, you have to have walls and defensiveness, and then everything's banging and battering on you. So the mood of hypnotherapy gives a taste of the softness and the fact that being defended is not necessary. Then, in a physiological way, that allows the prana in the small nadi to come into 2 side channels and then in the central channel. So it's easier to live. You're not so frightened of that. Okay, I think that's our time for the evening. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.